Hey everybody, my name is Mike and I'm a third-year medical student at the University of Illinois at Chicago College of Medicine. I'm currently supposed to be studying for one of the biggest exams of my life, but due to recent unfortunate circumstances, I'm compelled to make this video. The reason why this video is so unfortunate is twofold. Firstly, the hip-hop community and just the world in general has lost a beautiful person by the name of Nipsey Hussle. Nipsey Hussle was an artist from LA. He was shot and killed yesterday outside of his own clothing store. And anyone who's familiar with Nipsey knows that he was an intelligent, kind, loving man who was committed to improving his community and the lives of those people who lived within this community. And a quick listen to any one of his numerous interviews, whether it's the Breakfast Club interviews, GQ interview, whatever, all of them will attest to this man's character, and I recommend people go and check that out. He was a truly positive person and will undoubtedly be missed by many people. The second reason this situation is unfortunate is due to the ridiculous rumors and conspiracies surrounding his death, namely the connection to the death of Alfredo Darrington Bowman, aka Dr. Sebi. I refuse to call him a doctor. That's why I use the air quotes, because he was not a doctor. He was a fraud with no educational background in medicine or science. So, to my understanding, Nipsey was in the process of filming a documentary about the life of Mr. Sebi, which now, of course, I'm not sure if it will be completed. But, to the unaware, here's where this conspiracy comes into play. Mr. Sebi has made numerous claims, none of which have been scientifically proven, to have cured a number of incurable diseases that include but are not limited to AIDS, sickle cell, cancer, leukemia, which leukemia is a type of cancer. It's a white blood cell cancer, to herpes, all using natural remedies. And there's a subset of conspiracy theorists who believe that the government, and it's always the government, if you haven't noticed, assassinated Mr. Sebi because his cures would completely upend the medical industry and cost lots of important people tons of money. Something I never understood about this line of thinking is, ironically, this goes both ways. Treating and curing diseases is often highly profitable. And the first person to cure something like sickle cell, or the first person to cure something like, colorectal cancer, will be rich. And, this is why big pharmaceutical companies exist in the first place. The monetary incentives for curing diseases is present. So this idea that, pharmaceutical industry or the government, at large wouldn't want to cash in on curing a disease seems ridiculous to me. And to think that scientists who've dedicated their entire lives to curing diseases in order to alleviate human suffering are all being paid, to actively not actually do this research and to mislead the public is wrong, and it's offensive to people who actually do this research. I know people who do sickle cell research. I do sickle cell research myself at the University of Illinois, and people are actively looking to cure these ailments. I mean, I deal with sickle cell patients often. I see the struggles of their everyday life, and to think that people like me, or people like the physicians who I work under, who've dedicated their entire lives to this, don't actually want to help, is completely insane, and can only be claimed by someone with no real experience in the field. But anyway, I understand why people resort to theories like this. When something tragic happens that cannot easily be explained, conspiracy thinking oftentimes fills the void. People are drawn to conspiracy thinking because the idea of randomness scares us. Human beings are pattern recognizing machines. This is what we evolved to be really good at. And when things appear to be random, we oftentimes don't know how to respond. Nobody wants to think that some deranged asshole, could go into a school and murder children. Nobody wants to believe that someone could kill a well-intentioned, positive guy like Nipsey for no good reason. Nobody wants to believe that a man who promoted himself as a doctor and wanted to cure black people of all their illnesses could have died rather uneventfully from pneumonia, of all things. So all of these things are too random, and thinking that someone is in control, whether that someone is the government or Zionist or, insert your favorite mustache-twirling bad guy, it's actually not as scary as just admitting that bad things happen to good people every day for no reason. So the purpose of this video is not to get into the details of Mr. Sebi's life or death, but rather to explain to the public who may not be scientifically or medically literate that Dr. Sebi was indeed a fraud, a quack, a snake oil salesman, a con man who lied and took money from the most vulnerable groups of people, most commonly poor and uninformed black people. The very group of people who he claimed he wanted to help most. This is a man who sold, unproven miracle cures to people with fatal diseases. I have no sympathy for people like this. This is the last thing people need to get healthy is unsubstantiated bullshit. But this is especially the last thing that black people need, because I feel like we're, fed a uniquely steady diet of bullshit already. So once again, this video is not about the death of Nipsey. Rest in peace to him. Or the life and death of Mr. Sebi, but rather to inform people that, who may not be familiar with Mr. Sebi, to inform people of what he was really about. I feel like as a student of medicine and a medical professional, nearly all of the claims Sebi made have trespassed on science and medicine and are downright harmful. And I don't want people coming away from this tragic situation with an inaccurate description of this man and his practices. So, as we speak, prominent black media outlets are pumping out just trash, like just pure trash, of people who have no scientific background, who are saying, Nipsey was killed because of making a film about Sebi. These are outlets that get millions of views daily, tons of online traffic, and I feel like it's the least I can do is put out this video to combat this nonsense with some actual facts. But a quick disclaimer before I get into some of Sebi's most insane claims. I want to note that just because you say follow Sebi's alkaline, vegan diet, right? Thus, you begin eating more vegetables, you begin to lose weight, feel better. This does not mean that his reasons for recommending this diet in the first place are sound. In other words, people can be right by accident. This happens all the time. If I tell you that exercising is the only way to rid your body of fat demons, that cause obesity, so you begin to work out and you subsequently lose weight, that doesn't mean that fat demons exist and were the cause of you being fat. When you exercise, you burn calories, you boost your metabolism for a period of time that continues after you complete your workout, so on and so forth. The point is, weight loss induced by exercise is understood by science, and in no way involves obesity demons that you must purge yourself of. Likewise, there are benefits to plant-based diets, but these health benefits are understood by science and have been understood for a long time. Processed foods are in general not good for you. Science has known this, and modern medicine recommends that we eat as little of these foods as possible. Feeling better from Sebi's vegan diet, you know, if you were to, you know, adhere to it, also doesn't mean that his other claims are correct. So it doesn't mean that this diet cures cancer or AIDS or anything else. So now that this disclaimer is out of the way, I'll get into some of his specific claims, and I'm only going to focus on a few because sifting through this mountain, just this forest of bullshit, would take more time than I have. So I'm just going to focus on some of the most ridiculous claims that I've found, which I've narrowed down to 3. The first claim is the bedrock of his philosophy of pathogenesis, which is that all diseases are caused by mucus. Diseases present when the mucous membrane has been compromised. Okay, that's one. 2, there are no such things as germs, right? So virus, bacteria, fungi, those things simply don't exist. And I'll also add in, just for fun, he said there's also no such thing as proteins, right? Which is, to make of that as you will. I'll get into that in more detail later. And lastly, last but not least, diseases, according to Sebi, can only exist in acidic environments, right? Therefore, human beings should try to be as alkaline as possible. Now, as ridiculous as these claims sound, I urge all of you listening to do a bit of research. Go on his website, go on YouTube, search Dr. Sebi, and just listen to this man speak. And within, 5 minutes, you'll hear all of these claims. So, and these claims, they might sound innocuous or even reasonable for those with little or no scientific background. However, to someone with an extensive science background, such as myself, a medical student with a bachelor's degree in molecular and cellular biology, these claims are embarrassingly ignorant and demonstrate that this man had less than an elementary school understanding of the natural world. This man had no idea what he was talking about. Absolutely no idea. Honestly, this is not hyperbole. My cousin, who is in 4th grade, knows more about science than this man. If you were a doctor or a biologist or a biochemist and said any one of these claims, that would be enough to get your degree rendered null and void. And what's so troubling about the people who believe in this stuff is that they seem to be willingly ignorant, which is a common trait amongst conspiracy theorists and, people susceptible to various snake oil schemes. A simple Google search can disprove any of these claims. In another display of motivated reasoning and willful ignorance, this is a quick aside, but the people who defend Sebi also claim that he won a Supreme Court case somehow. This vindicates him. The winning of this case proves that his methods work and that he actually cured people. Firstly, even if this was the case, how his defenders describe it, it wasn't. But even if it was, the court is not the determinant of objective scientific truth. Countless innocent people have been put to death, and countless guilty people are walking free. So this idea that winning a court case demonstrates scientific truth should be put to rest. Luckily, this entire narrative is false, and we don't even have to go there. In the 1980s, Sebi was charged with practicing medicine without a license. However, the jury found him not guilty because they could not be persuaded that he was actually making medical diagnosis or prescribing medicine. Okay, this by no means proves that his cures work or that his methods are effective. This is a non sequitur. A more informal piece of legal information that does implicate Sebi in being a fraud is the case he lost in the New York Supreme Court in 1993, where he was banned from making any claims of cures, selling products, and he had to post an ad in the New York newspaper offering refunds to the court, refunds to the people that the court deemed defrauded after claiming he can cure AIDS, herpes, and leukemia. So, once again, all of this is Googleable and easily discovered. And I'll put some links to the court documents and a bunch of other things. But, you know, this confirmation bias and motivated reasoning is something that I feel is a feature and not a bug of all conspiracy theorists and you know, gullible people alike. You know, and all of this stuff is out there for people who are actually interested in facts. There's no scientific proof that Sebi cured anybody. Science does not work like this. It's shocking to me how many people do not understand how basic science works. If you really want to prove that a medicine works, you must go through several phases of clinical trials, you know, against placebos, against current treatments. It has to be deemed safe. I mean, it's a very long and arduous process. Results must be replicable. Research, you know, must be peer-reviewed, and so on and so forth. So anecdotes and he said and she said does not constitute scientific evidence. So just always remember that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, in that, you know, that which can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. Okay, so on to Sebi's first claim. And if you needed a reminder, that claim was that all diseases are caused by mucus. So this is actually so stupid. I don't know where to start. And once again, if anybody doubts that he made any of these claims, just go on his website or search YouTube. The examples of him making this like specific claim is in abundance. But so I don't know how he even comes to this claim, but you know, if I had to guess, you know, there are some diseases in which an abundance of mucus causes a patient tremendous harm and can even result in death. Cystic fibrosis is the first thing that comes to my mind. Cystic fibrosis is a disease in which your lungs, most troubling, you know, your lungs accumulate with abnormally viscous mucus, and is fatal with an average lifespan of about 37 years. You know, in previous decades, the prognosis was much worse, and the lifespan was much shorter. But due to innovations in treatment, you know, the average lifespan has been extended. But cystic fibrosis is an autosomal recessive disease caused by a defect in the CFTR gene on chromosome 7. This gene codes for a chlorine channel on the surface of cells that secretes chlorine into the lungs and GI tract. So when this channel is mutated, chlorine cannot be transferred from the cell into luminal spaces, such as the lungs and GI tract, where it needs to go. And this lack of chlorine causes a compensatory increase in sodium absorption via sodium channels. And a general principle in biology is that water always follows sodium. So wherever the sodium goes, the water goes. So this results in extremely thick and viscous mucus that gets trapped in luminal spaces, like, you know, your lungs or your GI tract. So just real quick, once again, your mucus needs a sufficient amount of water so it doesn't become super thick and viscous if your chlorine channels are not working properly. And the chlorine is trapped inside the cells. The sodium also gets trapped inside the cells. Since the sodium's trapped inside the cells, the water leaves the mucus where it's supposed to be and goes inside the cells, drying out your mucus. And now you have this thick mucus stuck in your lungs, and lung failure, respiratory failure is the main reason why people with cystic fibrosis end up perishing. So another disease that comes to mind is bronchitis. Bronchitis is another example of a disease associated with mucus. So there are diseases associated with mucus, but to make the claim that mucus is the cause of all diseases, I mean, mucus is not even the cause of most diseases. I'm at a loss for words. That it simply doesn't make any sense. And he actually goes as far as to say that AIDS is caused by mucus. You heard right. When he was actually pressed in court to answer for this, right? Somebody, I don't know if it was the judge or some prosecutor, challenged him and said, "Where's the mucus in AIDS patients?" He said, look, the mucus is in the skin, it's in the blood, it's in the lymphatics. So yeah, mucus is the reason for abnormally low CD4 T helper cell count. Mucus is what's ravaging your immune system, right? It's not a virus, according to him. And I can't make this up. Of course, HIV/AIDS is viral in nature, but since Sebi doesn't believe in viruses either, which leads me to Sebi's second claim, which is infectious agents do not exist. If he doesn't believe in virus, it's he had to create something to fill that void, and I guess that void was mucus. So, according to Sebi, I guess bacteria, virus, and fungi simply don't exist, despite the fact that we have known about their existence and can see them with microscopes. I mean, you can see fungi with the naked eye, but you can see bacteria with microscopes, and now you can see virus with sufficiently powerful microscopes now. But we've been able to see these things, bacteria and fungi, for hundreds of years. So this, once again, this is a claim that just on its face simply doesn't make sense, and I want to express how insane. I just want to express how insane a claim like this is. The claim that bacteria and viruses do not exist is such an egregious example of scientific ignorance. Saying microbes don't exist is as egregious for a biologist or a doctor as telling, a physicist or a geologist that the Earth is flat. It might actually be even more ridiculous. I can show you a microscope and show you a microbe, and prove to you that microbes exist. But if I wanted to show you that the Earth is round, if you're mathematically illiterate, I might have to take you into space to show you. So this claim is even crazier than that. So you might ask, aside from being able to simply see bacteria, why this claim is ridiculous. And here's a couple of examples why. There's more bacterial cells in your body than actual human cells. At birth, babies are given a vitamin K shot because infants lack vitamin K. Why do infants lack vitamin K? Because nearly all of humans' vitamin K is produced by your gut bacteria. And if you don't have vitamin K, your blood is not able to coagulate, thus leaving you at increased risk of hemorrhage. So you need vitamin K for coagulation, because vitamin K acts as a cofactor for an enzyme that's needed for various coagulation factors. So this is well understood, and there's pharmacology that was created in order to thin one's blood, after acute myocardial infarction, for example. So this is very well understood. And lastly, if bacteria and virus didn't exist, antibiotics shouldn't work, right? Antibiotics are designed specifically to target aspects of bacteria or bacterial or viral machinery. So if a bacteria has a molecular machine that creates proteins, we call this a ribosome, but we can actually develop antibiotics that target this machinery in order to kill the organism. If a bacteria has a thick sugar capsule, for example, that acts like armor and protects it, we can develop drugs that target that armor in order to kill the organism. And we have. This is literally the foundation of antibiotic creation, and we notice that microbes exist. We notice that they're infectious. We study them, and then we attack specific parts of their, anatomy, if you will, in order to destroy them. Ask anyone who's had an STD if antibiotics work. Ask anyone with chlamydia or gonorrhea or syphilis if antibiotics work, and I'm sure they'll tell you they do. As a quick aside, Sebi also said that proteins don't exist. He claimed nobody could explain what a protein was if asked. This is so dumb. I'm not even going to get into it. But this man was painfully ignorant of some of the most basic principles of biology and chemistry, while simultaneously claiming to cure people of AIDS and cancer. The thought that this man was so impactful and revolutionary that the U.S. government wanted to kill him for selling herbs is actually laughable. This man wasn't a genius. He was a fraud who took advantage of uninformed people for a living. I may also add that just because famous people, people in pop culture find him, insightful, that also doesn't prove anything. In one of Nipsey Hussle's interviews with the Breakfast Club, I don't know if he had more than one, but the one I saw, all three members of the Breakfast Club seemed to buy into Sebi's remedies, and Charlemagne, the god, believed that he was indeed assassinated. And the danger in three scientifically illiterate people using a platform as large as this, communicating to millions of people to promote, snake oil and conspiracy really bums me out. Misinforming young, impressionable, mostly black kids is not what the black community at large needs. And I view it as a setback. Nothing personal against the Breakfast Club. I like some of their interviews, but with all due respect, none of you know anything about science and should not pretend to. It's very irresponsible. The last claim from Sebi that I want to address is this claim that diseases can only exist in acid. Thus, human beings should strive to be alkaline. Once again, this man has demonstrated he does not know the most basic aspects of biology or chemistry. The body very, very tightly regulates pH in a narrow window of about 7.35 to 4.5, with a variety of biochemical mechanisms that people have spent their lives studying. There's books on shelves filled with this information, filled with this research. Firstly, the range of human pH is slightly alkaline. So the premise of no disease being able to survive in an alkaline environment is wrong before it starts, as all human diseases by definition occur in our bodies in this slightly alkaline environment. There's not much you can do by way of ingestion of foods to change your pH from this narrow range. And you honestly wouldn't want to. As a pH of, say, 8, which for those unaware of how the pH scale works, is more alkaline. So as you go up, from 0 to 14, it's like the standard scale. As you go up, you become more alkaline or basic, and as the numbers decrease, it indicates acidity. So even going from something like a 7.45 to an 8, that would kill you. You're dead if you do that. Eating alkaline foods does not change your blood pH. The stomach is extremely acidic, with about a pH of 3. Is eating slightly alkaline food going to change the harshly acidic environment of the stomach? No. No, it's not. After your highly acidic food contents leave the stomach, which all food contents are acidic after it leaves the stomach, they enter the duodenum, and they are mixed with a huge load of a substance called bicarb, which is meant to neutralize all this acidity. And this all happens unconsciously, and it all happens before anything is absorbed into the blood. So, these bogus claims, they go on, and you would spend several days, just getting lost in this nonsense. But an honorable mention of one of these bogus claims is Sebi's concept of electric foods. Sebi claimed that since we are electric in nature, we need to consume electric foods to cure us of diseases, and these electric foods can only come from the jungle. He goes on to say that electricity can only be created from the friction of copper and carbon, and that the brain is the only source of electricity in the body because it's composed entirely of carbon and copper. Now, he throws something in about the pineal gland in this as well, but once again, if this man had opened the very first page of an organic chemistry book, he would know that carbon is one of the most abundant elements in the human body and is the backbone of all life on this planet, not just human life. So the idea that carbon's only found in the brain, and that copper is only found in the brain. I mean, carbon is in every tissue in your body, and copper is in, as far as I know, it's in every tissue in the body as well, in very small amounts. So, once again, this is you can do this. You can have someone who seems articulate and they seem knowledgeable, and they just go and they're just vomiting these claims, and no one is checking them. No one is saying, how do you know any of this? What research have you done? Has your research been peer reviewed? Have your methods been tested? Nobody says any of that, because people want to believe it. So, I was originally opposed to addressing quackery like this because, being a medical professional, I didn't want to give junk science a platform to exist. But now I realize that's the wrong approach. I feel that one of the reasons we are seeing an uptick in junk science and conspiracy thinking is the silence of experts. This is my very first, very first YouTube video. Making videos of any kind is completely out of character for me, but I feel like myself and others, other people like me, need to fight back and speak out against pseudoscience because it's dangerous. Everything from flat Earth to anti-vax to quack remedies that allegedly cure terminal illnesses should be fought against tooth and nail because ideas have real-life consequences. Just a couple months ago, a diabetic 13-year-old boy died after his mother listened to a herbalist who told her doctors were devils intent on poisoning him. So instead of taking his insulin, like he should have been, the boy began taking his quack doctor's herbal remedies, and he not surprisingly, he died. So I also feel obligated to address this specifically because I am a man of color and a man of science. So, for those with resources and who are interested in the truth, the answers to many of these, pseudoscientific claims, they're out there for people to find. People have dedicated their lives, they've made livings off of explaining the idiocy of alien abductions or chemtrails or flat Earth or whatever. But I feel as if many of the conspiracies and pseudoscientific claims, which largely affect black people, fly under the radar. I think it's complex, as I think the answer is complex as to why people don't address these specifically, but I feel like people who are qualified to address these myths don't do so in fear of trespassing a taboo. And many black people who are qualified and interested in educating people on these matters fear social isolation and backlash from their own kind because they know that people take these beliefs very seriously. They hold them close to their chest, and there will be backlash for expressing it. And on the other end of the spectrum, there is an abundance of black media outlets that get a ton of online traffic that promote this garbage, and they're quite frankly misinforming and brainwashing young black people, usually, for clicks, and that's unacceptable to me. So I made this video out of love. I wish to arm people with knowledge, the knowledge they need to protect themselves against snake oil salesmen like Sebi. This is a man who on his website charges thousands of dollars for powders and pills filled with herbs. Simply go on his website and read his admission that these do not cure anything, and they're not meant to replace any medication that you're currently taking. But these remedies are being touted everywhere. Not on his website. Not on his website, but his YouTube videos and other media outlets as cures for incurable diseases. So to me, this is not just ignorant; it's evil. And I'll close by saying, if anyone's interested in becoming more scientifically literate, or wishes to be able to decipher these alleged scientific claims and evidence, reach out to me on Twitter. I just made a Twitter account, or comment on this video and talk to me. So I'm not sure how responsive I'll be, because as I mentioned, I have an important test coming up, but I felt like this topic was important enough for a video. So anyway, that's all for now. Take care.